Firing, I'm just inquisitive and concerned about Belfast. The last number of years you've had meet the buyer meetings in Belfast. I don't see any for Cork, I don't see any for Limerick, I don't see any for Galway, I don't see any for Athlone. Um, I'm finding it difficult to comprehend why we should be actively looking for procurers outside the state, right? And where this is money generated within this country, we should be trying our best to keep it in this country. Just a question with regard, does the Northern Ireland Procurement Officer have a meet the buyer group down in Dublin? Does the UK Procurement Office have a meet the buyer group in Dublin? Does any other European network have a meet the buyer group in Dublin? Why are we doing that? Just you mentioned consortium and you're looking at things like that at the moment. Is it not a bit late? Because we brought in the policy, you're looking at trying to solve the problem. The horse is bolted and it's allowed the bigger companies to gain a foothold now. And so the micro companies that most of us are concerned about have no chance whatsoever of getting back that ground. Dr. Davis had some research done on the UK, but are we going to be doing the research with regard to the impact of procurement at local level? Those were interesting figures that Dr. Davis threw out there. And lastly, is there going to be some sort of way we'll be able to measure the savings that are going to be made as a result of this policy change? I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Deputy. Mr. Quinn.
Thank you, Chair. Just the first question, Deputy, was in relation to the geographic basis for the allocation of lots. In 1014, we've given guidance to public procurers that they need to perform a market analysis. Market analysis is critically important in that markets fundamentally are structured differently depending on what the goods and services are. So if you take for something like, if you take the market for desktop software, the reality is it's an international market. It's dominated by 2 or 3 suppliers, and the market is structured in that way. In other words, there's no desktop supplier who's big in Kerry, for example. In other words, it's Microsoft, and just that's the answer. So some markets are structured in fundamentally different ways. So if you look at, say, something like cleaning services very much locally delivered. So you would need to have a strategy that reflects local delivery in the context of cleaning services, because that's what matters. In other words, you're not going to get a supplier for cleaning services to come from Donegal to Dingle to clean the local Garda station. It wouldn't happen in that way. So as the market is analysed for each individual good or service, the lotting strategy would actually be determined in that way. So if I'm buying software, I might lot it in a different way. But if I'm buying something like locally delivered goods or services, I might have to structure it in a fundamentally different way. So again, something like desktop support, if I need my PC fixed, there's no point if I'm, again, sitting in Dingle to ring somebody in Dublin to come all the way down in a vehicle. So I could have a strategy that basically says, look, I need to deliver that locally. So that's the geographic basis that I'm talking about, Deputy. The second question was in relation to Wales. They are centralising approximately, I think, 20% of their spend at this moment in time in their new national procurement services. We're going to go beyond that. We're going to 50% in relation to our model, because when we have looked at our goods and services and how they are split out, we have a higher percentage. I think the UK model is fundamentally different than the Irish model in that local government in the UK does a huge amount of delivery of goods and services across the island. So they deliver education services, they deliver a lot of health services in the UK, whereas that's not the case in Ireland. So the model is a little bit different because it's done differently in the UK. In terms of the comments regarding the Meet the Buyer events, we have held Meet the Buyer events outside of Dublin. So we had one in Kilkenny previously. We were at the Ploughing Championships, so we put our wellies on for the Ploughing Championships recently. I personally have spoken at quite a number of events outside of Dublin, including the Cork Chamber of Commerce. We have somebody going to the event in the West, which is coming up in November. So it's not, if there's a sense that it is Dublin-centric, then that is not the case. The Meet the Buyer events at a national level are organised by the Intertrade body, which is jointly funded North and South, and therefore it is a cross-border body, and we hold the public procurement events both North and South, and people from here travel up to Belfast. And they're in their cars at the moment on the way up to the event for tomorrow. And the same when we have the event in Dublin, that buyers from the north come down as well from the north. The good anecdotal information you'd be glad to hear is when I visited other jurisdictions, including the North, Wales, Scotland, etc., is everybody complains about everybody else's people coming across the border to deliver goods and services. So it's not unique to this environment that there is a very strong perception of services being provided from outside of the space. Just your last point was with regard to.
Do you know of any? Does the Northern Ireland Procurement Office come down here and have a Meet the Buyers event?
They attend the Meet the Buyer event here in Dublin. At the one in City West, you'll find people from CPD at the event in City West, and we reciprocate and we go to the Belfast event as well.
So they don't have a specific one themselves?
No,
we set the ones up here.
There are two. Intertrade organises both events, Deputy. And we travel to the one in the north, and the guys from the north travel to the one in the south. Just in relation to the comments regarding consortia building, and I think the term you used, the horse has bolted, the reality is that the new public procurement structures are still only in very much their infancy. Today, the OGP has 40% of the staff we're building up to put in place. We're recruiting from within the public sector to put people in place from within it. So it's a concentration of expertise and capacity from within the system. But to portray it that we have, we're a long way down the roads in relation to these matters. We are in relation to policy, but operationally we have yet to put the structures in place to deliver that 50% of goods to be procured centrally.
I just wanted to say that just to commend Intertrade Ireland. Intertrade Ireland have been carrying out a lot of work over this in the last few years. They had a Go Tender programme, which is an excellent programme for a large number of years, on the delivery of training to people who seek to get into the tendering system. And I think they were the only organisation who really jumped into that space in a really positive way, and they're credit to the enabling and the empowerment of Irish business.
Thank you, Deputy. Are you satisfied, Deputy Lawler? Did you want another question?
No, Dr. Davis.
Dr. Davis.
Thank you. You raised a couple of issues in terms of what's it like in other jurisdictions, in particular Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales and England. In the UK, there are currently 2 public procurement regulations applicable both in Wales and Northern Ireland, and therefore Scotland is then seen as a separate entity in itself. Items of interest within that are, and this is probably a key one, the Public Services Social Value Act in 2012 introduced a statutory requirement for public bodies to have regard to economic, social and environmental well-being in connection with public service contracts. So they actually legislated for a particular social clause in terms of putting it through. So one particular angle within the UK was to legislate for that. We can have a debate as to whether that's good or bad, but it is a particular approach that they've taken that we haven't. And maybe that's an issue for ourselves. Value Wales, in terms of some of the work that they've done, they've developed a community benefits measurement tool, for instance, and I'll quote this. This sophisticated approach is seen as a leader within the UK in assessing outcomes, and it's been used to track 6 projects. It shows that these contracts valued at 146 million resulted in 56 million in salaries to Welsh citizens, and 68 million was spent with Wales-based suppliers. In addition, the 6 projects created 44 apprenticeships and supported work for 140 disadvantaged people, as well as 2,200 jobs being protected or created. John McClelland, who has carried out reviews both in Scotland and in Wales, commented in 2012 in the review of the Wales public procurement that over the last 2 years, the community benefits approach has been applied to 3.4 billion of contracts. Therefore, there are a further 50 projects in the pipeline, and it is estimated that they will deliver similar benefits to the first 6. The sort of scope that he meant was that the creation and protection of additional approximately 16,000 jobs in Wales. So there are approaches that are out there that are directly being targeted in other jurisdictions around jobs. Translated over, if you took the 6 billion that we spend, it could be equivalent to 24,000 jobs in Ireland, which is about 1/4, I think, of the jobs plan itself. So it can have a significant impact if targeted in a specific fashion. Second thing that you asked in terms of
Just interrupt you there for a moment. Can you just clarify the title of the documents that you're referring to, both of them, just for our record?
it was John McClelland, and it was a review of Welsh public procurement, and it's published on procurement.wales.nhs.uk. But I'll actually supply those documents as well.
Thank you very much. Sorry for interrupting.
No problems on that. The other part that has occurred is probably regionalisation. Wales is divided in north and south. They're very clear that there is an imbalance, and they've actually gone proactively in managing regionalisation. So where they wish to have SMEs participate in the north, they will proactively try bias to do that as a disadvantaged area. Again, similar lessons that can be learned here. Scotland has particular targets set. So for instance, local authorities will set targets of 75% participation within a local region. And those targets are then measured against have the winning bodies, the awarding contracts, being awarded to companies within that region. Again, we haven't put targets in. There's been a debate as to whether we already are achieving them, but without actually setting a target, you don't know whether you're achieving it or whether you're not achieving it. Part of the issue for us is we wait for the stats to come out and then we decide to set the target, rather than setting the target and then trying to find the stats to prove we are achieving it, which might be a better way of doing it. One note, regionalisation. It was mentioned that we're breaking into lots. Proactively throughout the European community, it's been encouraged that organisations break into lots. And I think the example being given here was a cleaning, and that it can only be delivered locally. That's a great idea, unless, of course, that you're buying on a national contract, in which case you buy through a facilities management company nationally, and they will then outsource or subcontract through to the local delivery. So at what point does procurement take responsibility for the delivery locally versus the procurement take responsibility for just a contract that goes in at a national level? And it's an interesting debate, because over the past 3 to 4 years, ministers have stated that we're actually contributing to the local economy by awarding national contracts because we ensure they actually subcontract through to local suppliers. There's absolutely no onus on a commercial entity to subcontract through unless we legislate for it, in which case we interfere in a competitive marketplace. So we have to ask the question that if we award a national contract, take facilities management, where cleaning could be delivered to all of the schools nationally through one facilities or 2 facilities management companies, why do they have to use local suppliers? Commercially, they don't. And it's just something that's missing, but it's very clear in terms of Ireland compared to our closer partners that they are being more proactively managed at that local level rather than some of the work that we're doing.
Thank you, Mr. Davis, or Dr. Davis. Deputy Laura, are you satisfied with the answers so far? Mr. Sweeney, had you any remarks to make in relation to Deputy Laura's comments, or are you satisfied that you've made your points?
No, just one bit I'd just like to pick up, because there was a lot of attention was made reference to the medical device sector in particular, and it's a sector that my colleagues in the Irish Medical Device Association have particular concerns regarding public procurement. And one of the things that they were constructively pushing for is better engagement actually with the indigenous and the smaller medical device companies here to work with the buyers. And one of the advantages is through the Action Plan for Jobs this year is the Health Innovation Hub has been able to work through them to actually adopt a more pragmatic approach to actually rolling out innovative solutions that are developed here and using Ireland, as that to use it as an export market. And it's a similar sort of scenario where we're looking at with the software companies, and particularly very small software companies. So you actually would see that I remember talking to someone a couple of years ago in the Department of Finance on the IT side, where there were a two-company operation had a central government contract. The problem is we're not actually championing what we are actually our successes as well. So we need to be able to say is that what small companies are winning, but also use them as case studies. And that will help the likes of Intertrade Ireland's go to tender program and other training programs that are needed, particularly around consortia, to help companies on a peer-to-peer learning to see how they actually can do it. It also helps with the feedback mechanism to make sure that if they've got a favourable treatment in terms of conditions, why aren't the other buyers or suppliers potentially getting that?
Thank you very much, Mr. Sweeney. So I want to thank everybody for coming in here this afternoon and for your contributions. It's been a tremendous help to us. And thank you, members, for your engagement. So the meeting is now adjourned. And I'd remind members of the Select Committee that the Select Committee is scheduled to meet on Tuesday, the 4th of November at 10:30, when we'll take the committee stages of the Intellectual Property Miscellaneous Provisions Bill, followed by the Workplace Relations Bill at 1:30 p.m. of the Industrial Relations Amendment Bill 2014. Thank you.
In, as we know,